She opened the door, and lost everything. Plates clattered, the TV screamed, and a man in boxer shorts barked orders from her kitchen like he owned the place. And her daughter. Her daughter said, "You don't mind, do you?" She didn't answer. Not then. But 3 months later, she vanished. No goodbyes. No explanations. No keys left behind. And soon after, someone offered her something no one ever had, not in her whole life. But when the past came knocking, it didn't come with apologies. It came with demands. And for the first time, she said no. What made her walk away? And what did she find in the one place no one thought to look? The truth won't come fast. But when it does, the tears will come with it. When Joe dropped his spoon and folded into the linoleum like a crumpled coat, Eleanor didn't scream. She stood still. Silent. Watching the steam rise from his coffee as if the cup would say something wise. 40 years together, and just like that, he was gone. The doctor said instant. That's supposed to be comforting. 3 months later, the silence in their apartment had taken on a strange texture. It wasn't quiet, not really. The kind of silence Eleanor lived in now was thick. It hummed when she breathed. It pressed against the walls. No footsteps. No throat clearing. No chair sliding across the floor just because he couldn't sit still. Then the phone rang. Claire. Her only daughter. "Hi Mom," Claire sniffled. "Listen, we're in a bind." She wasn't calling to say, "How are you?" She was calling to announce that she, her husband Tom, and their 12-year-old daughter Emily were moving in. "Just for a while," Claire said. "Rent's gone up again. And well, you're alone, and it's not fair to let you be alone. Right?" Eleanor blinked at the receiver. Before she could object, Claire added, "Anyway, we're already packing. We'll be there by Friday." They arrived with noise. With groceries that didn't fit in the pantry. With bags that took over Joe's closet. Claire had reassigned bedrooms before Eleanor could so much as open her mouth. Emily took over the living room with her tablet and headphones, blasting tinny music that leaked into Eleanor's ears like a faucet drip. Tom planted himself in the kitchen in boxers, chain-smoking, manspreading at the table like he'd built the place. The man didn't say, "Good morning." He barked. He grunted. He once asked if she'd consider not cooking onions because the smell clashed with his morning vape. Claire, once a sweet little girl with thick braids and scraped knees, now stood with crossed arms and a hardened face. "Mom, the water bill's insane. Could you maybe pay the full utilities this month?" Eleanor's pension had become their lifeline, and her leash. They left dirty dishes. They left guilt. They left her with nothing but silence once again, only now, it wasn't peaceful. There was one place Eleanor could breathe, a weathered bench by the bus stop, 3 blocks down. Or better, the number 57 bus to the edge of the countryside, where her Joe used to take her on weekends, to a lake they never swam in but always admired. On a Sunday, with a knitted shawl over her shoulders and 2 crackers in her pocket, Eleanor stepped onto the bus. Her hands trembled, but her face was stone. The lake was still there. Still quiet. Still holding the secrets of other old souls like herself. She sat on their bench. And beside her sat a man. "Eleanor." She turned. There he was. Mr. Martin. She remembered him from the apartment 2 floors down, back when she and Joe were newlyweds and Martin still had a head full of thick black hair. Now it was silver, but his eyes hadn't changed. "You still take the 57, he asked. "I don't take much of anything anymore," she said. They sat. Talked. A little at first. Then more. He told her his son had moved to Oregon, forgot to call for Christmas. His daughter sent a card with a printed signature. "It's all email now," Martin said. "Except no one sends you one." Eleanor told him about Claire. Carefully. Martin listened like a man who had no one else to listen to. They shared ice cream. It dripped down the cone and onto Martin's wrist, and he laughed. The kind of laugh that comes from the ribs, not the throat. "Come back next week," he said. She did. Week after week, the world made a little more sense. They didn't speak of love. They spoke of soup recipes and rain patterns. They shared bus rides like confessions. Then, one crisp afternoon, Martin looked at her and said, "What if we stop leaving at the end of the day? What if you stayed? Stayed? With me? My house is old, sure. But there's space. Heat. I cook, not well. But I try. And I don't smoke in my underwear." Eleanor smiled despite herself. "I'm serious," he said. "We've both been made to feel like burdens. But we don't have to be, not with each other. You could have your own room. No strings. No obligations." Eleanor went home. But something had shifted. The next night, Claire was waiting at the door. "You've been gone a lot, Mom," she said coldly. "And we need groceries again." Eleanor looked around. Her kitchen, Joe's old chair, the photo of their wedding now shoved behind Emily's anime posters. "You need groceries?" Eleanor asked softly. "Yeah. I mean, we all live here, don't we?" Eleanor didn't answer. That night, she packed her bag. She left a note on the fridge. "Gone to the countryside. Don't wait up." And she left her keys. When Eleanor stepped off the bus that final morning with her one worn suitcase and a wrapped bundle of sweaters, she didn't look back. The city was behind her. Her daughter's voice, the constant complaints, the manipulations, left ringing in the air like a fire alarm long silenced. Martin was waiting by the lake. Not like a lover. Like a man who understood exactly how heavy a suitcase filled with silence could be. "You came," he said, rising from the bench. No smile. Just quiet recognition, the way soldiers once nodded across trenches. "I don't want to be anyone's burden," she said. "Good," he answered. "Neither do I." His house sat on a small hill that overlooked a gray field where geese passed through each year. A modest place. One story. Faded blue shutters. Everything smelled like old cedar and leftover pipe smoke, and somehow, Eleanor felt at home. He gave her the guest room. Clean sheets. Her own towel. A small drawer labeled yours. They didn't celebrate. They brewed tea. Listened to the wind. Ate buttered toast without talking. For the first time in years, Eleanor exhaled without guilt. Over the weeks, a rhythm formed. Martin made breakfast, Eleanor cleaned the stovetop just like Joe used to like it. They went to the market together. He let her pick tomatoes. She let him carry the bag. He never asked about Claire again. Never pried. Until one afternoon, a letter came. It was from Claire. Not handwritten, printed. "No, Mom, no, how are you?" Just a demand. "I heard from a neighbor you left town. You didn't tell us where you were. That's really irresponsible. Tom lost a job. We're struggling. Can you send money, just until we get back on our feet?" Eleanor folded the paper quietly. Martin watched her, waiting. But he said nothing. She walked to the fireplace. Tossed the letter in. Watched it curl and blacken. "I think she lost me before I ever left," Eleanor said. That night, Martin set 2 bowls on the table. Stew. Thick, peppery, with a bay leaf floating like a promise. He raised his spoon. To dignity. Eleanor raised hers. To silence that doesn't hurt. But peace never stays. 2 days later, Claire found her. She showed up at Martin's door. Winded. Flushed. This is insane, Mom, she snapped. I've been calling everyone. I had to pay someone to find this address. What are you doing here? I live here now, Eleanor said, steady. With a stranger? Martin stepped forward. Not a stranger. A friend. A partner. Claire turned on him. And what do you want, old man? Her pension. Her name on your will. Claire. Eleanor's voice cut like frost. Leave. I'm your daughter. No. You're someone who used to be my daughter. Until you decided I was a wallet with gray hair. Claire's face twisted, shocked. She had never seen her mother speak with such steel. You left us, she whispered. No, Eleanor said. You left me. Every day you stayed in that apartment and treated me like furniture. Claire left in tears. Slamming the door didn't help her feel better. Eleanor sat down. Shaking. Martin poured tea. Said nothing. That night, he spoke gently. I wasn't going to say this yet. But I want to ask you something, and I want you to think about it without feeling anything. Just facts. Eleanor waited. I want you to marry me. She stared at him. He smiled softly. Not for romance. I won't pretend to be Joe. I'm not looking for poetry. I'm looking for rights. For security. So no one can kick you out. So no one can tell me you can't sit by my bed if something goes wrong. Eleanor's eyes burned. Can we even do that? She whispered. I checked. A notary in town. They handle everything. We can keep things separate. Just names on paper, and hearts, if they wish. She didn't answer. Not that night. But in the morning, she woke early. Made eggs. Folded napkins. Put her hand gently on Martin's shoulder. Let's see that notary, she said. They signed papers in a quiet office that smelled of ink and forgotten chairs. The clerk asked, Do you have rings? Martin said, We don't need rings to share coffee. They laughed. Quietly. The next week, Eleanor received another letter. It wasn't from Claire. It was from a lawyer. Claire had filed an inheritance claim, trying to prove she had partial rights to Eleanor's apartment, citing cohabitation, shared expenses, and family duty. Martin read the letter over her shoulder. You don't have to fight alone, he said. They visited a lawyer of their own. Drew up protection papers. Martin made Eleanor co-owner of his home. She doesn't get to rewrite the past, Eleanor told the attorney. No, ma'am, he nodded. But she'll try. Weeks passed. Winter came. The air bit through coats like knives. Martin's cough worsened. You all right? Eleanor asked one morning as he leaned against the table. I'm old, he shrugged. Old people cough. But she knew that sound. Joe had coughed like that. One night, Martin fell asleep on the couch and didn't wake for 2 hours. Eleanor shook him hard. His eyes fluttered open, confused, glassy. We're going to the doctor, she said. No. Then I'm going alone. And I'm telling them about you. That shut him up. They went. The doctor confirmed it, weakened heart, arrhythmia, blood pressure that danced like a drunk. Martin stared out the window during the diagnosis. Eleanor stared at him. When they got home, she made soup. He didn't touch it. Martin, she said, holding his hand, what aren't you telling me? And then, the twist fell like snow. I haven't told you everything, he whispered. Eleanor leaned in. I used to be rich, he said quietly. A long time ago. Before the kid sued me. Before I gave it all up. She blinked. I hid what was left. It's not much, not anymore. But I'm not poor. And I never was. I just needed to find someone who didn't want me because of it. Eleanor's breath caught. I didn't marry you for money, she said. I know, he whispered. That's why I married you. The house creaked in the wind that night. Eleanor sat in the living room, hands folded in her lap, staring at the fireplace Martin had lit earlier. He was asleep in the armchair, a blanket tucked around his legs, breathing shallow but steady. The doctor hadn't minced words. Weak heart. Age-related decline. Manageable, for now. But manageable sounded like a polite lie to Eleanor. Like telling someone they could row a boat through a storm if they believed hard enough. She glanced over at him. The man who had asked for nothing but had given her everything, dignity, peace, a seat at her own table again. The next morning, Eleanor woke early. She brewed his coffee just the way he liked it, and when he shuffled in with that slight limp, she kissed him on the cheek. You know, she said softly, we never did celebrate our marriage. Martin smirked. You want cake? I want meaning, she said. But cake sounds good too. They went to the town bakery. Bought a cherry tart. Walked home slow, fingers brushing but not clasped. They sat on the porch and ate the tart with mismatched forks, looking out over the frozen lake like it might melt for them. I used to think love was a fire, Eleanor said. It is, Martin replied. It just burns lower, and longer, when you tend it right. She smiled. Later that week, they sat with a lawyer. Together, they updated their documents, wills, health directives, power of attorney. Eleanor insisted on co-signing the deed to the house. I want no one knocking on this door with paperwork, she said. Martin nodded. No one will. And yet, someone knocked. 2 weeks into the new year. A woman, tall, well-dressed. Lips tight. Eyes hard. Behind her stood a young man in a pressed coat and scarf, phone in hand. Dad, the woman said flatly. Martin froze. Angela, he said, the word like rust on his tongue. I heard you've been remarried, she said, stepping in without being asked. Funny. You never answered my calls last year. I didn't have anything to say. And this is her. Angela turned her gaze to Eleanor. The woman who moved in. I'm his wife, Eleanor said simply. And this is our home. Angela gave a tight smile. Well, you may think that. But there are still legal matters to review. Financial documents. Estate claims. I've brought our lawyer to advise you. Martin stood, slowly. Get out. Dad. Now. The young man, Angela's son, apparently, didn't move. I said out. Angela sneered. This woman's poisoned you. You know she's after the house. Martin's voice cracked, with rage, not weakness. She's the only person in 20 years who asked me how I feel, not what I have. Angela's mouth tightened. They left. But the silence they left behind weighed more than the noise. That night, Martin didn't eat. I knew they'd come, he whispered. Eleanor sat beside him. Let them. They won't stop. Then we don't either. The next day, Martin got a letter. A formal petition for conservatorship. Angela was trying to claim he was mentally unfit to manage his own affairs, citing age-related confusion and undue influence. Eleanor read the letter aloud, then tore it clean down the middle. Martin, exhausted, leaned his head back. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For letting them turn into this. Eleanor took his hand. We can't choose how they grow. Only how we stand. They fought back. With affidavits, doctors' statements, legal counsel. Martin passed every cognitive test. The court denied Angela's petition. But something inside him began to fade. Eleanor saw it. The slowness. The pauses. The shaking hands he tried to hide. One morning, she woke to find him sitting by the window, just staring at the lake. "Bad night?" she asked. "Just thinking." "About?" "How lucky I am," he said. "To be an old man who got a second shot." She sat beside him. "You gave me mine too." He looked at her, eyes glassy. "I never told you the full story," he said. "About the money. The fallout." She said nothing. Just waited. "My wife left when the money got tight. My son stayed long enough to contest the inheritance. Angela, she helped them. Told the judge I was unstable. That was 10 years ago. I gave up the business. Bought this house under a trust. Hid what was left. Didn't want to live as a target anymore." He turned to Eleanor. "But now I don't want to hide anymore." That night, he handed her a small, worn key. "To the safe deposit box. If anything ever happens." She didn't want to take it. But she did. The next week, Martin collapsed on the porch. Ambulance. Sirens. Hospital lights. Beeping machines. He made it through the night. But barely. They let Eleanor stay with him, because she was his wife now. No one could tell her to leave. No one could shut her out. He woke once, weak as a shadow. "You remember the key," he whispered. "I have it. You'll be okay." She kissed his forehead. "You made sure of that." He smiled. Barely. Then slept. That night, Claire called again. Eleanor let it go to voicemail. Then she pressed delete. Eleanor stayed at Martin's bedside for 3 days. She left only to shower and to sit quietly in the hospital chapel where the windows never let in enough light. Nurses came and went. Machines beeped. Doctors whispered outside the curtain, thinking she couldn't hear. He was stable, but his heart, that stubborn, sputtering engine, was running on borrowed time. On the 4th day, he woke. "You're still here," he rasped. "Where else would I be?" Martin blinked, tired but grateful. "You're the only thing in this room that makes sense." She smiled, but only with her mouth. Her eyes stayed clouded with what-ifs. Back at the house, the mailbox overflowed. Eleanor shuffled through the stack, bills, junk flyers, and one thick envelope bearing her name, hand-addressed. She paused. No return address. She opened it on the kitchen counter with trembling hands. Inside was a letter. The handwriting was old, familiar. She froze. It was from Joe. The envelope had been postmarked 3 months before his death. Misplaced. Delayed. Forgotten in a system that no longer had time for human things. Her breath caught as she read. "My dearest Elle. If you're reading this, then I've chickened out again and never gave it to you. Or worse, I ran out of time. I've been thinking lately about what happens when I'm not around. You won't say it, but I see the way you hold the corner of the pillow when you think I'm asleep. I see the worry hiding under your smile. Elle. If life pulls me away from you, I want you to do something wild. I want you to live. Don't give yourself to silence. Don't let guilt grow like vines around your ankles. And don't, for heaven's sake, let Claire guilt you into servitude. I know our girl. I love her, but she'll lean hard if you let her. You gave me the best life, Elle. And if you find someone who sits with you on cold days and remembers to butter your toast without asking, don't look away. You deserve a second story. Even if it's short. Especially if it's kind. I'll be watching, not in a spooky way. But in the wind. In the silence that doesn't hurt. Forever yours. Joe. She sat down hard in the kitchen chair. The letter fell from her lap like a blessing. Joe had known. Not just about death, but about her. About the way Claire would twist her heartstrings. About the guilt. About how lonely silence could be when it wasn't shared. She pressed the letter to her chest and whispered, "I found him, Joe. You were right." The next morning, a new envelope arrived, this one from Angela's lawyer. Petition to dispute spousal legitimacy. Angela wasn't done. She was now arguing that Martin's sudden marriage was a manipulation. That he hadn't been of sound mind when he signed over half the property and assets. Eleanor clenched the paper in her fist. She'd been quiet for most of her life. She'd been the agreeable one. The peacemaker. The doting mother, the faithful wife, the invisible help. Not anymore. She called the attorney Martin had worked with, a soft-spoken man named Greeley with sharp eyes and a sharper pen. "I want to fight this," she said. "You're already winning," he replied. "Legally, you're solid. But I'll prepare for a courtroom." "No," Eleanor's voice was calm. Cold. "We'll settle it before it gets there." A week later, she met Angela at the lawyer's office. The daughter had aged quickly since their last meeting, or maybe the makeup just wasn't enough anymore. Angela gave her a long, rehearsed glare. "You've done well for yourself," she said. "Amazing what old women can pull off when they find a lonely man." Eleanor didn't flinch. She pulled the Joe letter from her purse, set it down gently on the table between them. "This was from my husband. The first one. The man I built a life with. He saw me. He understood me. You know what he asked of me? To live." Angela rolled her eyes. "I don't see how that's relevant." Eleanor leaned forward, her voice a thread of iron. "I am living. With a man who respects me. Who doesn't look at me like I'm in the way. And if you think I'm walking out of his house without a fight, you've picked the wrong widow to bully." Angela shifted in her chair. Eleanor stood. "This is the last time I speak to you directly. All future communication goes through Mr. Greeley. If Martin wants to see you, that's his choice. But if you keep attacking me, I will countersue for harassment. And I will win." She walked to the door. Angela called after her. "Is he even going to make it through the winter?" Eleanor stopped. She didn't turn. "Even if he doesn't," she said quietly, "he won't leave me with nothing." Back home, Martin was awake and smiling faintly. "You smell like courthouse drama," he teased. Eleanor leaned down, kissed his forehead. "I won," she said. He nodded. "Of course you did. Winter came hard that year. Snow piled against the windows. The lake froze solid. The old wind screamed down chimneys like a spirit trying to come home. Inside Martin's house, now their house, time moved slow. Gentle. Like old hands folding linen. Martin's strength faded. Not all at once, but day by day. First, the stairs became an enemy. Then, spoons felt heavier. Finally, even words became precious things, not wasted. Eleanor never left his side. She read aloud from old mystery paperbacks. Played his favorite records. Brushed his hair back and whispered things she never got to say to Joe. Things like, "I'm proud of you. You made me brave. I hope the wind carries you gently." He listened. Smiled when he could. Held her hand even in sleep. On a Tuesday, the sky blank with snow, he opened his eyes and said, "It's time." Eleanor nodded. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. Not yet. He reached into the drawer beside the bed, the one labeled odds and ends, and pulled out a small envelope. "I wrote this last night," he whispered. "Don't read it now. Wait until I'm gone. Then open it outside. In the cold." She wanted to protest. But his eyes said, "This is the last thing I'll ask of you." So she took it. He smiled. Thank you, Eleanor, he said softly. For letting me matter again. She kissed his forehead. He closed his eyes. And this time, he didn't wake up. The funeral was small. Just the way he'd wanted. No eulogies. Just music. Old violin recordings from his youth. A note on the program, printed in quiet type. No flowers. Just kindness to someone who needs it. Eleanor buried him in the coat he'd worn the day they met again at the lake. She stood beside the grave long after the others left. Snow fell, silent and soft. She pulled the envelope from her pocket. Opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a letter and a deed. The letter read. My brave girl. If you're reading this, I've gone. And if I've gone, then I hope you're standing in the snow like I asked. It's cold, I know. But I want you to feel it. Feel what it means to be alive, to still ache, still shiver, still hope. I've left you everything. Not out of charity. But because I've never trusted anyone like I trust you. You brought dignity back into my final days. And in return, I want to give you a beginning. The house is yours. The account, small but stable, is yours. There's one more thing. In the drawer under the radio is a small blue box. Take it to the bank. They'll know what to do. P.S. I asked the lawyer to amend one last detail. A copy of this letter goes to Claire. I wanted her to know that someone chose you, fully and freely. Because people like us aren't burdens. We're the last ones who remember how to love without asking for applause. Love. M. Back at the house, Eleanor found the blue box. She took it to the bank. Inside. Certificates. Stocks. Bonds. Titles. A second deed, to a small lakeside cabin she'd never heard of. It turned out Martin had once sold a large company. The trust he'd used to disappear from the world had kept growing. Quietly. Steadily. He hadn't just left her a house. He'd left her a future. 2 weeks later, she visited Claire. Not to fight. Not to forgive. To say goodbye. Claire opened the door with guarded eyes. She hadn't shaved. The house smelled of stress and takeout. You, Claire said flatly. I'm not staying, Eleanor said. Just came to give you something. She handed over a manila envelope. What's this? A letter. From Martin. It's a copy. He wanted you to have it. Claire opened it slowly. As she read, her expression shifted. First confusion. Then disbelief. Finally, shame. Raw and real. She looked up. He left you, all of it. Eleanor nodded. Claire didn't say, congratulations. Didn't cry. Just whispered. I didn't think anyone could ever love you like Dad did. Eleanor smiled, sad and warm. Neither did I. But he did. She turned to go. At the door, Claire called out, Mom, are you happy? Eleanor paused. She looked at her daughter, this grown woman with tired eyes and a wounded spirit. I wasn't. Not for a long time. And now? Eleanor's voice was soft. Now I feel whole. Spring came. Slowly. The snow melted from the fields. The lake cracked and breathed again. Eleanor stood at the edge of the dock at Martin's hidden cabin. She had driven out there alone, just to see it. Wind in her hair. Letter from Joe in one coat pocket. Letter from Martin in the other. She closed her eyes. 2 men had loved her. One gave her a life. The other gave her it back. And for the first time in her 72 years, Eleanor felt something she had never let herself feel fully. Freedom. No one owned her time. No one decided her worth. She was not someone's mother. Not someone's wife. Not a burden. She was herself. The cold kissed her cheeks. And she smiled. Write in the comments where you're from, let's see how far these stories can spread. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss new exciting stories. See you soon.